Good evening, everyone. My name is Priyanka Chadha. I'm the National Participation Program Lead at Motorsport Australia, and one of the projects I work on is the Girls on Track program. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're all dialing in from, and I'd like to pay my respect to elders past and present. I'd also like to thank Michelin for presenting tonight's webinar. This is part two of content creation. The first one was really popular, so we're back. I'll hand over to Charlie to get into it.
Thanks, Priyanka. Oh my gosh, we're back. Part two, the sequel, content creation, because it was so popular. And of course, we've brought back the ones, the onlys, Jules, Ingall and Tenayah Mcleod. Thank you both so much for being here and joining us once again. But like every good sequel, we're not going to go over the same storyline. So if you haven't seen part one of content creation, we urge you to go back. You need to go to the Girls on Track Motorsport Australia on YouTube. That's it. And make sure you watch part one, because we're not going to cover the same ground. So let's quickly go over what we're not going to do. We're not going to talk about their journey into the sport. That's in part one. We're not going to talk about free work versus paid work and what you do to start charging and those blockages to feel like, oh, when do I stop working for free and start getting paid? We're not talking about that anymore. We're not going to go an overview on what their work day looks like, although we will quickly check in with the exciting things that they've both been doing over the past couple of weeks, because they're cool and we all want to hear about the cool stuff that they've been doing. Building a portfolio, we don't go across that, but I do urge you, if that's something that you're super interested in, Jules actually shared her portfolio, went into it, exactly what she includes and why. Make sure you head over to the YouTube channel to check that out if that's of interest to you. And then also the challenges that they've faced in their respective roles. We're not going to cover that either. It is all about the here, the now, the practical, but also most importantly about your questions. So here is your chance to have a big think about what you would like to ask Tenayah and Jules, and pop it in the chat and we will go through them one by one, and we're going to try and get through as many as we can, which means I need to stop talking and you guys need to start asking your questions. So Tenayah and Jules, you've been all over the place for the past few weeks. Jules, we're going to quickly kick off with your trip to the States, because I've been watching everyone across summer and everyone goes to Europe and everyone does the Europe trip and you get Europe FOMO. And then I had survived Jules's USA FOMO. You were there, you were there at so many racetracks all over the States, and you were front row seat to Brody Kostecki and Shane Van Gisbergen racing over there as well. Tell us everything. What happened? Why were you there? What did you get up to?
It was pretty cool, actually. Yeah, literally just arrived back a couple of days ago from a couple of months in the US. I can actually thank my daughter for the trip. She, thank goodness, doesn't want to be a race car driver, but she wants to be a race car engineer. So she's gone to university, to one of the top engineering universities in the States. So Russell and I decided to go over with her and then have a bit of a trip on top of it. And coincidentally, it coincided with Brody and Shane racing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So couldn't miss that opportunity. Literally arrived into the States after 30 hours of flying and went straight to Shane raced oval track in Indianapolis on the Friday night. So went straight there, spent the weekend in Indianapolis. Yeah, I managed to get some media accreditation there, which was a pretty cool experience to experience. I mean, I've worked in Europe a long time ago, though. Obviously done a lot in Australia. I've never done any work in the States, so that was pretty cool. And then also managed to go to the final round of the Indy cars to watch Scott McLaughlin and Will Power at Laguna Seca, which was insane. So yeah, it was really cool, really interesting experience seeing how different sporting bodies approach things, how they run their media. You know, it was, yeah, just a really cool experience.
That's awesome. And yeah, that was going to be my next question. Anything that stuck out to you? What were the big differences that you saw between how, yeah, we kind of run things over here and how it might be working in media over there?
I think I think just the States generally is everything is so much bigger. Like we've got a population of 30 million, they've got a population of 330 million. So anything that you do there is just massive. You know, the racing in Australia, the supercars only have a very short season, not a great deal of racing. In America, they're racing like, you know, pretty much every weekend. So once you get on that bigger scale, everything is on a much bigger scale. So the media side of it, I just think it's such a bigger machine because they can cater for so many more people as well, because places like Indianapolis, like that circuit is insane. Like the media center was over 4 levels. It was enormous. So they can cater for a lot more people. So from that side of things, I think it's just different because of the size and the numbers in America.
Yeah, I think every time I've watched any of your stories, I was like, man, it's just like, imagine that. That would never happen. Sort of, can you imagine we brought that many people to Simmons Plains? Like the whole place would explode.
So, the amount of media that they have at an event was just ridiculous. And like me being me, I kind of got chatting to a lot of different people, and just, you know, they had social media influencers as accredited media, and you know, people that just really random, but I think their kind of attitude was the more people that you can get into an event talking about event, the more reach that the sport gets. So they were kind of getting reach outside the motorsport fans as well, which I think was pretty cool. Like I was covering it for some people back in Australia, Speed Cafe, like did a little bit of stuff for them. So that was, you know, from my point of view, that was pretty cool. But I was in the motorsport side of it. But there was a lot of non-motorsport people in that were media accredited, which I think is something that doesn't get done as much here. And, you know, same thing, like you said, we just haven't got the facilities or the size, or, you know, imagine the GC 500 trying to bring in an extra 50 or 100 media, you couldn't cater for it. So it's just a whole different sort of, great experience though, like highly recommend. You know, if you're looking at doing this sort of thing, you know, you don't just have to limit yourself to Australia. And even if you are in Australia, try and do events overseas, even if it's just one-offs here and there, because it's such a different experience.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Last week we had Keely share a story in the Girls on Track Facebook group, which again, if you're not part of, I completely urge you to hop on there, go to Facebook, search FIA Girls on Track Australia, will pop right up. You can interact directly with the ambassadors and champions. We're all in there. But the reason why I say it is because Keely actually shared her experience of being at the Singapore Grand Prix. She was helping in ticketing and the operations of the Champions Club. And what really stuck out to me is where she said that she used to work in XLs at Grassroots Motorsport and then used that experience to travel overseas and use those skills there. So you're absolutely right, Jules. I think if it's something that you want to try and want to get out there and experience, there's certainly everything you can learn here you can apply overseas, and proof, like there it is in the Facebook group right there. There's someone who's gone and done it. See guys, there we go, we're all telling how great she is. There it is. Hop on.
That was a pretty cool story.
So great story. Tenayah, closer to home. Well, actually, you come from, you know, you live in Victoria. I live in Queensland, so it's not home for either of us, but it's certainly travelling through the ACT and New South Wales with the only Peter Brock Trophy. So this year, in case you've been living under a rock, my life has been the Peter Brock Trophy for the past 6 months.
So was mine.
And it is culminated in the trophy tour. So it's very much, think the NRL trophy tour. Supercars have decided for the 60th anniversary of the running of Bathurst. No, there's a bit of conjecture about this anniversary thing. Don't get me started on that. But the trophy has gone to regional centres. So it started with us. We took it up to, where did we take him? We took him to Tasmania. And I've been flying around with this trophy. I've had anxiety about putting this trophy on planes for like, it's killing me. Anyway.
Amount of people that have said, what will happen if you lose it? Like what? No. No,
I've put
never.
like 7 air tags in the bag just in case. I was so scared. Anywho,
We gave it
but
to Cam Hill the other day to fly with it, and he's like, don't don't do this
I
to
know.
me.
Honestly, I love Cam Hill, but I was like, look, if one or two of you are going to fall out the helicopter, I know which one I'd rather, not the trophy. So, but anyway, sorry, Cam Hill. He's adorable. He's wonderful. Yeah, so we've been traveling around with the trophy, taking it to regional centres. Repco have done an amazing job of wrapping a whole transporter, a whole B-double in these incredible livery to show that it's the Peter Brock Tour. Of course, everyone's been able to get up close with the trophy. We've had drivers there, we've had activations there, giveaways, all the rest. But the most important part of it really is to show that we've been there. And Tenayah, for this past week, it's been going for 2 weeks. This past week, you've travelled all the way from Canberra to Wollongong to Sydney and then to Orange. I like to make it sound fancy. To Orange today before the trophy will land at Bathurst on Tuesday, where it will be handed over by SVG in Garth at, I believe it's going to be turn 1 now. I don't believe it's going to be at Skyline.
Yes.
Yes. So please run us through how on earth you not only do what you've done in terms of video, photo, social, and then doing it in regional towns on the road and it just being a whole big blur. Talk us through it.
It's a pretty big blur, and we were talking before this webinar started. Out there was Mount Panorama before it got too dark. I set myself up nicely positioned, have a little bit of Bathurst, and then the sun went away, and they need to light it up. It needs to be like glow in the dark rocks or something like that. But yeah, I left Melbourne on Sunday to drive to Canberra, which was the first leg of where our company picked up to do the content. And the trophy tour has been really cool. It's been incredible to see how many people have come out, or actually more so the interest of, the trophy going to these places where we don't race or very rarely race supercars are in those areas. Like in Canberra, there was so many people. Wollongong was massive. And I guess from my perspective, my job was to create a suite of content to capture things that were happening at the events, create the suite of content from images to social clips to web clips, which go on Supercar's website and things like that, including like video news releases, which we call VNRs, which go to news outlets like Channel 7, Channel 9, Win, all that stuff. And if they can't have representation at the event, sometimes TV cameras roll up. Like Win was there, but then Channel 7 wasn't. So they then get access to this VNR, which then they can send to their content team to cut up, and it kind of looks like they were there. So it's just about providing that suite of content, get as much coverage as possible across social, digital, and on TV as well, which is the big one, the big fish.
And yeah, I think so that's where your and my jobs cross over. So I work in PR and comms for Supercars. So I'm the person that receives Tenayah's links and content, and then we make sure it's all packaged up and goes out in normally we use MailChimp, and it goes out to media from there. We write the release, we have the links to images, links to videos, but for context, I think you run through an awful lot of content that you've captured there. It's also important to talk about the turnaround. So if we don't get something to news outlets by 2:30, we've missed the boat. And Tenayah, sometimes that event, that event might run till 2:00, and Tenayah's got to turn it around that fast.
I'm sitting in the car with like my feet up on the dash, like editing like this, trying to get export VNRs and things like that. Going through, and the events go for 2 hours, so we're shooting content for 2 hours, and then it's taking that content, taking all the images, putting in a timeline, cutting as quick as you can. Like it's a real rough cut, because then it obviously then goes to the news and things like that, and they do their own refining and things like that. But it's real rough cut, getting rid of all the shakes and the movements and the me talking or yelling at someone to do something, and then sending this 12 minute file out to the people that need the content. Or to Charlie, really, and then she sends it to all the people.
Yeah, sort of. My colleague does it. He's way better than me at it because I freak out. Alrighty, so let's talk about practical stuff before we hop into the questions. I can see there's 5 in there, but please make sure that now is your time. We're going to probably chat for another couple of minutes, and then we'll hand over to you guys to ask all of the questions. So Jules, let's quickly start with you. So gear and equipment. So what would you recommend, someone that's starting out, what do you recommend they should use as a photographer?
I actually had this situation with one of the girls that I'm mentoring here in Queensland. She's fresh out of school, studying, wanting to get into motorsport photography, and she was borrowing equipment, I think off her uncle or something. And it's just, it's a really tricky situation. She's straight out of school, she hasn't got any, or hasn't got a big budget. You know, a decent, like an R3, which is probably what all the top motorsport photographers are using, that's like $8,000 for the body. So, you know, people can't afford that. So my advice to her was get yourself one reasonable body and one reasonable lens. I think these days with digital photography, you don't have to get top of the range, but you still have to get something reasonably good. But you don't have to spend, you could, you know, for a few $1,000s, you could get away with something. Start with a base and then build from there. I think with digital photography, one of the other really good things is that, you know, you can take a photo, and with the megapixels on cameras these days, you can crop quite a bit. So one lens can cover quite a good range of areas. So that was sort of my advice to her. Always buy the best that you can afford. I always tell people that, because you're very quickly going to outgrow your equipment and want better. But start with kind of the basics and then build as and when you can afford it.
And Tenayah, from a videography perspective, what do you recommend starting out? What's the have to haves?
Have to haves really depends on what you're doing or where you want to focus. Video is like same as photography, but it's a massive hole. Once you start, like Jules said, you always want more, and you're always finding new things that can make you do different things. So it's about starting with a good base. You know, Canon, Sony, they're the leaders in the market. I'm a lifelong Canon fan. I know Jules is as well. But then 90% of the videographers I work with are all Sony based people. But if you can go and rent cameras and take them, test drive them, while you might pay a couple of $100s to rent it for a week or so. It's better than, you know, the couple of grand that if it doesn't do what you want. Or I think a big thing that a lot of people don't consider is the way it feels. For me, it's a massive thing to how a camera feels in my hand and the ergonomics of it, because I'm doing so much with it, and you know, I've constantly got it attached to my hand. It needs to be able to hold it right, and it feels comfortable in my hand. So when I'm doing a lot of handheld stuff, can trust and keep it stable and things like that. So your phone's a great asset to start with, but then beyond that, you know, to do motorsport things, to really get noticed, you do really need to invest in it, because what we do is really cool, and you can go film soccer games and football games and things like that, but we're very sort of exclusive in the way we do things. We don't practice, we just race on weekends at big events and things. So to get involved in the big circus, you do need to prove yourself, and starting with your phone is a great way to start. But then to get on that big stage, you need to have invested in yourself and backed yourself to be able to do this. And yeah, it's a couple of grand to really get started. And then not only do you need the camera, you then need the laptop to be able to process everything. But yeah, for me, it was like I grew up racing motocross, and I sold my motorbike for like $4,500 to buy the first camera I got, and that was a GH5, and a Panasonic GH5, and that set me back maybe $2,500. But I used it for 3 years, and you know, made probably nearly $100,000 using it for those 3 years. So the investment worth obviously that $2,500 really served me well, and taught me a whole lot of things that then allowed me to make the money to go and then invest in. You know, I've got over $50,000-$60,000 of equipment in now. So yeah, you got to back yourself first. Like, while you may not be making money straight away, if you put in the work and put in the effort and back yourself by investing in the equipment, it's going to pay off. But it's a long-term game too as well. I know there's a lot of,
but you can't expect
so many different things.
You can't expect a career without investing in it to start with. It's no different to a university degree. Like, a university degree is
you just don't have a government that
tens of thousands
that'll help you.
Yeah, but you still, especially now, HEX is not free anyway anymore, but
I'm still paying off my HEX.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just expect that, I'm going to be a photographer or whatever. In any sort of career, you've got to invest to start with. But I think that investment to start with, like you said, it doesn't have to be a big investment. You start small and then build on it as your career progresses. You get better, you earn income that covers your costs.
Probably my biggest advice with a camera, buying a camera body, is make sure you get one that has an interchangeable lenses. While something that just comes with a fixed lens might be a little bit cheaper, you'll be really limited with what you can do. And those like kit lenses where they're stuck on, they're not great. They're not great, and they're never gonna. And they're not. They're not professional, and you're never gonna roll up and get paid by someone using a $700 camera, because they can just take it on their iPhone the same amount of quality as what you might get. So, getting a little body, like I know Canon have the new range of like their R7s and R8s and things like that are, maybe just over the $1,000 mark, but then you can put a lens, like I got a couple of lenses from Canon today, they're $4,500 lenses. You can then whack that lens on your $1,000 body down the line, but then they also have a massive range of just, the $200, $300, $400 lenses that start you off. But then the same $4,000 lens that I can put on my body, you could then put it on the camera body that, the lower level camera body. So yeah, interchangeable lenses of a series that a lower level series is very, very important and a great place to start.
Yeah, I think it's really important. We both said about investment and investment in yourself. So we can take that to talking about course certifications and study. I can see actually in the chat there are a couple of questions about studying for something like presenting and content creation. So we'll try and cover all bases here because all three of us can. So let's talk about photography. Jules, what do you recommend studying? What route can you go down, or many different ones, to study and learn the skills of photography?
I think we talked a bit about this on the last one. It's a tough one. I didn't study to start with. I started in the field, like just taking photos, particularly with digital. You can play around a lot. You can just go to a local club. You can go out to Ipswich, stand at the fence. You don't need accreditation or anything. Stand at the fence. You can try all different settings. Google. You can learn so much online. Trial and error. I feel like you learn so much through practice, and particularly motorsport photography. It's quite tricky because it's not about freezing a car on a track. It's about showing movement, telling a story. Composition is really important, and I think a lot of that comes through practice, trial and error. But at the same time, I believe that you still have to understand the technical side of how your camera works. It's quite technical as well. So I kind of spent quite a long time just going to racetracks and learning, and now with Google, ask questions, talk to other photographers. But then also I then did a diploma of photography that got me the technical side and the understanding that I think takes you to the next level. So I don't think you necessarily need to do an actual course, and a lot of photographers that you talk to these days never did. But I also think the more you understand about photography, both, like, you have to have a natural understanding of composition, and you can get people that technically can take the perfect photo, but the composition just isn't there. It doesn't tell a story. It's not interesting. So there's kind of those two sides to it. So I think, the big thing is to practice, just get out there and take photos, get inspiration from other people that you admire, look at people on social media, like follow people on social media whose photography you like, and then kind of get ideas from that. But if at all possible, I would still recommend doing some sort of course to understand the technical side as well.
Tenayah, is there anything you'd add to that? Can you learn videography watching YouTube, or do you need to go do a course?
You certainly can learn videography watching YouTube. You might not learn the right things. It's very hard to, unless you own a camera already, it's very hard to get your hands on a camera and you know, put into practice the things that you're learning. You know, editing and like photo editing, video editing is very good, you know, on YouTube and things like that. There's squillion courses out there, 30-40 minute things. You know, you can buy a $200 membership to a learning platform and learn just what you can learn at uni. But the thing that got me for uni that really, you know, other than my parents saying go to uni in case you're not very good at this, go to uni and get a backup plan. That was pretty much my folks saying do that. The thing that was the most valuable thing for me was, yes, the technical side, but also big universities have, you know, lots of funding and lots of things like that, and they help you do cool things. So when I was at uni, they lent us gear and we could go and, you know, borrow equipment for free. We could borrow photo cameras, you know, $8,000 bodies and lenses and things like that, and video cameras and things like that, and go and make our own content and practice, and yes, make things for assignments, but also then, you know, when you got it for the weekend, you can then go to a motorsport event and, you know, you're using this equipment that you don't own, nor have you had to pay for. So that's a big thing of going to uni and being involved in those circles. And also, like, my university helped me be able to make a short film, and we used like a Red digital camera, which Red is very high cinema style cameras. You know, the bodies start from about $60,000. So without that opportunity, you know, I've used it on a couple of jobs now, but when I got started, I would have never been able to get my hands on that level of equipment and really understand the next step. Like, I do a lot of things in social media world, but, you know, using these big cinema cameras, it kind of opened my eyes up to, did I want to go and work in TV, or did I want to go and shoot movies, or did I want to go and, you know, be a $2,500 a day creator, you know, work for big companies, shoot TV commercials, or did I just want to make content for social media and use equipment that is, you know, way still expensive, but on the lower scale of, you know, I'm not dealing with lenses that are $15,000 each or $20,000 each and bodies that are $100,000. You know, I'm not dealing in that realm, and being able to use that equipment at uni and play around with those things, it scared me because I'm like, this is so expensive. But it allowed me to see that I didn't want to work in that super high end stuff. Like, it took 3 days for the production company to shoot the Repco TVC that was 90 seconds. It took them 3 days to shoot that. And I don't have the patience for that. So I'm like, I need it now. I need to do it now. So, you know, learning more about myself and practicing with all these things, it made me realize that, you know, short form, quick turnaround stuff is what really excited me. And that's the route I wanted to go down. I wouldn't have known that I didn't want to do that high end stuff if I hadn't had the chance to do it.
Yeah, I think that's so important, isn't it? Open yourself up to all these different opportunities. But what I took away from what you just said there was finding the most practical course you can. And I think, just to answer Emily, I hope I said that right, Emily, to answer your question in terms of presenting, if you want to go and do a course, of course, you can go and study journalism. That's probably what I would say is the best route, because then you're not only going to not close yourself down, but you're not only going to be able to do that skill in motorsport, you're going to do it across any kind of sport or news, because those are the skills that you need to be able to use when you're presenting in front of a camera for motorsport. So the most practical course you can possibly find, one where you are straight into writing for a newsroom, one where you're straight into creating video news releases, straight into presenting in front of a camera, straight into interviewing someone in front of a camera. That's what you need to be doing to build a portfolio to then show that you can do these skills. And I think Jules and Tenayah both say the same thing. You need to show that you can do it. That's going to put you above everyone else when you're going for a role, or whether you're trying to gain clients. it works both ways. So I would say I personally went to Mcleod College because I found that it was the most practical. From day one, you were not only studying journalism, but you had to contribute to the newsroom. I think I started when it was the Women's World Cup last time round, and day one I was interviewing Matildas, and you just had to do it even though it was your first day. So I think throwing yourself into something like that, as Tenayah said, you will soon quickly work out whether it's something that you want to do or not. So that's my advice to you.
Sorry,
Priyanka,
I'm just going to jump in and answer the second part of that question is how do you find people who will be in these roles? Well, the Girls on Track Pathways events, the ones that we run across the country now, we have presenters like, well, Charlie, Emma, Kate, Nadine, Jess, Dane, they're all involved in the program. So they attend these events when they can. And Jules and Tenayah as well are part of the program. There are a bunch of other, women across different roles. So it's a great way to not only understand maybe a career that you think you want to get into, but explore everything else that's out there too. So we have professionals from the industry who come to these events as well. So from Michelin to Super Cheap Auto to Porsche to Toyota, all the OEMs, Ford, they're out there at our events to help you and answer your questions. And through these pathways events, we've seen girls get internships, because I think that was another question. Internships, opportunities that have led to part-time jobs and even full-time jobs. So yeah, we've got a few events left this year. We've got Gold Coast coming up, and then Sydney, and then we end the year in Adelaide. And if those are not where you live, don't worry. We'll have a calendar full of events for next year as well.
thank you. Perfect. Get amongst it. You can meet us in person, guys.
We are real. We are real. We do exist.
Yeah, we don't just hang out at racetracks. We go to other places occasionally.
I don't. No.
And maybe it's worth actually touching upon Tenayah and Jules, what you're doing with girls that you've met, and you're mentoring. So Tenayah, maybe you want to talk about that, and Jules as well with your experiences. It's probably good.
Yeah, for sure. At the Australian Grand Prix this year, I met a girl named Amy. It's very, like, there's a lot of people there and there's a lot going on, but you remember the people who really stand out. And I'm a little quirky, so I like quirky people. And Amy came up to me, she's like, Tenayah. I'm like, yes. And she's like, I love your podcast. I love you. Blah, blah, and just like overwhelmed me with like so much. I was like, holy moly, like you're hard to forget. And it was just a very good, and then I was like, that girl, I remember her. And we, there were 75 or something girls there, and spoke to so many people and so many names and so many introductions and things. But Amy was a girl that I really remembered. She's like, I want to do this. I don't know how to do this. I was like, what do you want to do? She's like, I want a photo, video, all those things. And then like the day after the event, texting saying, hey, how are you? And not in an annoying way, just like this is someone who's passionate, and this is someone who wants to really do it. And that matters to me, because I don't want to put my time and energy into someone who is just trying to figure out if this maybe might be for them. This is what the webinars are for and the events and things like that. But I'm not going to mentor and open up, my world to someone who's just kind of working it out. You need to know, and you need to be like, yep, I'm in, let's go. And I'll show you everything. There's no secrets here. You can learn it on YouTube, or you can learn it from me. So I've been doing that with Amy since I think Winton, so May. She's been working with us, and actually I gave her her first paid job. She come and shot a Castrol. Molly Taylor launched her Castrol rally car, and I brought her along as a photographer, and she got to work on a proper set, really. Shot all the photos that went out to the media, and liaised with the client, and had to deliver everything and all that sort of stuff. And she's only been with me for a couple of months, but I just knew that she was someone that not only did she have the talent, she also had an existing portfolio, which if you don't really have anything, I don't really know if you've got I don't know what the right words to say, but yeah, you just need to have that sort of conviction that you can do it and that you want to do it. And the best way to prove that is through doing it, starting and seeing if you can do it, or if you know, being keen to work out how to do it. So working with Amy, and it's been awesome, and you know, she's part of our team now. And yeah, it's really cool that I met her through this program, and she's been a really valuable asset to our team, and yeah, it's been a really good experience.
And Jules, can you talk about because I know you're mentoring several different girls at a time.
2 girls. I think for me, one of the reasons I really wanted to get involved in this is because when I started just on grassroots stuff when I was at school. But once I left school and I was like, this is it, I am going to be a motorsport photographer. I remember there was a couple of other motorsport photographers in the area. Like I was in Melbourne, that lived in Melbourne as well. And I was like, I'll work for free. I'll do whatever you want. I just want to shadow you. I just want to learn. And they just weren't interested, just would not help, didn't want to share, wouldn't share their knowledge. It was just that they were so unhelpful. So I think that side of things, if I could have just gone to a racetrack and just seen how, you know, and like I said, taking content of motorsport, there is, you know, there's a lot that you can learn by shadowing someone. So the 2 girls that I've been working with for the last couple of months is Zara and Emily. I think Zara's already she's pretty on top of it. I don't think she needs me at all. I think she's, you know, very switched on her own. So she's kind of halfway there already. And then Emily's straight out of school. So she's probably at that stage where she knows what she wants to do, but just needs a bit of experience. So we've just gone to a couple of tracks, a couple of clubby events, got another one coming up. You know, things they did some girls on track stuff for Priyanka. Just working with them from that point of view, because I think, like I said, I just worked on my experience when I was starting out. And if you can just follow someone and see how they do it, this is what you have to do. And, you know, and a really important thing is meeting people and making contacts. So just, you know, when we went out to Ipswich, like just introduce them to everybody that I could, make sure you introduce yourself, say who you are, you know. And so I think from that side of things, I've really enjoyed getting to know those girls. So hopefully we'll, like I said, Zara's already doing amazing things, and Emily, I can see a really good future for her as well. So I'm really enjoying spending time with both of them.
Yeah, I bumped into Emily at QR a couple of weeks ago when it was the Triple Eight Test Day, and we had a front row seat to Shane going into the wall. It was quite it was quite she was there for one of the biggest moments of the year, and she got to see the whole craziness unfold. And we both looked at each other, and I went, "Wait till you get to Bathurst." This is how exciting it can be. But no, it's so wonderful to. Yeah, like, you know, so many of us know you, Jules, from, you know, we've known you growing up and we've loved having you as part of our lives. And then to see, the next generation of women that you're nurturing through as well, like it's wonderful. So thank you for that. It's so great.
No, it's like I said, it's so cool to be able to, you know, and it's just such a hard thing to, you know, it's not like I want to be a secretary. It's just such an unusual job that, I think this whole girls on track thing, you know, I think, and actually that was another interesting thing when I was in the States. I was chatting to a couple of people at Laguna Seca, and they were talking about the girls on track there. They were talking about people they knew that were involved in it. And it was so good to see that, you know, it is something that's giving people a leg up, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, awesome. It's going global. It's global, Priyanka. Yeah. Alrighty, so let's crack through some questions. I can see there's 14. I know Priyanka's been working very hard to answer some of them for us while we chat. So let's go through some nuts and bolts ones. We've got, well, how many minutes? Let's say 15, 17 minutes. So let's crack through some. So from Caitlin, we've got, what are some of the best ways to make your content stand out? Any key trends that you've noticed at the moment? I'm hoping that's a sort of more of a videography question perhaps, but we can go both ways. So let's start with you, Tenayah, and then we'll talk to Jules about photography.
Making content stand out. I'm not a trend not follower, but I just kind of do my own content. You know, there's this big new uproar in super fancy, twisty, turny things and fast paced stuff, and it's not really my style. So I wouldn't say that I follow the trends. But then we have a videographer in our team who does do all that fancy, twisty, cool, fancy stuff. So I don't really need to. I'm a very corporate creator. I create things that are, you know, tell a story more than, you know, tell a story through the visuals rather than needing to be all fancy. Just the story is told in a simple, but, you know, a good way, but it's a simple way. So in terms of following trends, I think you need to be quick. You need to be, if you want something to take off, you need to be really quick on the trend, because otherwise you just get so oversaturated so quickly because you're looking to do the trend that is whatever it is, but so is a single other person. They're also wanting to get on that. Eventually, you've seen it that many times that you're like, I am just like, I'm not interested in this anymore. I've seen it too many times. So you need to be early, identify them early. F1's a good place to start. There's a lot of things that, and like a trend's not a trend until a lot of people do it. So like, it only becomes trendy when everyone's making it. So if you kind of miss the boat sort of by the time it's trendy. So it's about identifying the things that are really cool early. You know, following all the F1 pages. The people in F1 are the best at what they do, and that's why they start a lot of the trends, because someone's like, wow, that's cool. And for Repco, we try and create things, but we do, you know, take the F1 idea and work out how we can create it in supercars land, and send it to our, you know, the fans of our sport. So once it's a trend, you're probably too late, but you know, you can still, if you still find that it works, or if it's lasting a long time, then just to work out a way that you can add your own spice to it.
And Jules, in terms of photography trends,
I think
we don't do
that's
style,
kind of
but
I think that's kind of a double question though. Like there's the trend, like do you want to follow the trends or do you want to stand out and have a long career? So I think it's more about, for me, I'm definitely old school because I started in film photography where, you know, there was no trend. And I think because I started in that, I didn't get into the whole videography thing, which probably is the trend at the moment more so than still photography. But I think if you want to play the long game and you want to stand out, one mistake that I feel like I see a lot of people make is that they just smash their feed with photos and, you know, okay, I went to Bathurst and here's a photo of everything. Whereas I think it's what Tenayah said, that the reason we all love motorsport so much is because it's just, you know, that feeling when you drive over the hill into Bathurst and you see the sign in the background and just, you know, the emotion and, you know, it's the excitement and it's the disappointment and the frustration. It's everything. They're the things that you want to try and capture. And if you can capture unique, like raw emotion, that sort of thing, that is what is going to make you stand out. And that's going to, people are going to want to see that. So to me, it's about telling a story with your photography. Like I said before, you still have to take a good photo. You know, you might get Shane crashing at Ipswich, but it's blurry and you've cut off half the car. It's a waste of time. Just throw it in the bin. It's got to be good content, but it has to be a good story as well. So personally, I'm not, you know, for me, trends, I mean, I get it, but it's not for me. I would rather be about taking good content. So I think if you want to do it, have a really good social media profile. Like at the end of the day, places like Instagram and Facebook are your resume and your grid. I was taught really early on in Instagram, your grid has to be visually pleasing. And so think about things like that and only post your very best content. Like if you don't think it's a great photo, just leave it, forget about it. So to me, I would look at that sort of thing to stand out, just be good, be different and tell a story.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. I think looking at as a couple of questions from Tara, talking about trending sounds are enormous focus for most social media managers. What would be your top 3 recommendations for grabbing attention on social media in the motorsport space? I know there's a little bit of a sponsorship question there as well, but just I think this ties in nicely to what we're kind of talking about. It's not necessarily about trying to be trendy. It is about trying to tell that story. And motorsport, even though we are working in, you know, a realm of metal and wheels and shocks and springs and all the rest, there's an awful lot of emotion that goes into this sport. It's a roller coaster of highs and lows, and exactly what Jules says, you need to be able to find that moment and capture that rawness of that emotion, whether it's from a driver, whether it's from someone behind the scenes, whether it is someone in the car or XYZ. That's really where that's where we live. That's the story that we're trying to tell. On the flip side to that, if you are thinking about in terms of for a sponsor, a lot of the content that we see go really well is think about places where you wouldn't normally see a supercar. So for instance, a supercar on dirt, a supercar on snow, a supercar on the moon, like that's, I know it's not going to happen, but it's just, that's the kind of content from a sponsor perspective goes really quite well. So Cam Waters getting into his supercar Mustang at the speedway, drinking a can of Monster. Sponsors love that. It's content that rates because it's something that you wouldn't normally see. So when we're at the racetrack, we want to capture the essence of racing and everything that makes our sport so magnetic. And then when we're looking for sponsors and when we're looking to service sponsors for their kind of content, and Tenayah does this all the time, you're looking at something that is a little bit out of the box, and you're going to see a supercar where you wouldn't normally see it. That's normally the stuff that will cut through. So hopefully that kind of answers that question a little bit for you.
I made a video on Sandown that was purely on tires. It was just me videoing tires, and it was one of my best performing content pieces. People don't see what happens to tires very often when the broadcast cameras aren't on, and I was just shooting tires, and like it's just bizarre. It's a massive thing for me from a, you know, I create for a sponsor, I'm not a driver creating, but I mean, I do represent a couple of drivers from a media management side that look for sponsors and things like that. And it's all about just making that relationship as valuable as possible. I know there's a question in there about how do you show the EOI, you know, how do you show the return on investment of, you know, if a sponsor, you know, gives you $500 or $500,000, it's just a scale of, you know, motorsport is cool. How can you make, you know, if you're representing a driver or making content for a driver, how do you tangibly, you know, make that worthwhile beyond experiences? Like experience are cool and hot laps and things like that, but social media is a massive thing because a company could go put their you know, they can go put their logo on a billboard for X amount, or they can put their logo on a race car, and then that comes with the driver being, you know, a physical walking, talking billboard pretty much of the sponsor. So how can you make the driver, like the Cam Waters one with the Monster can is Monster activate really well and Tradie activate really well, in terms of like Red Bull obviously do it, you know, the best out of all of them. So how can you wind it back, bring it back to smaller scale things, less big budget projects and things like that? How can you bring it back, and how can you say your sponsor is Red Bull or some kind of energy drink, like something like that? How, you know, as simple as just sitting in your race car with a can, or with a can of, like, if it's WD-40 or something like that, like how can you make it so easy for them to want to be involved with whatever program it is? It's hard to give specific advice when it's such a wide open scale of different things, but yeah, something like that. That's my 2 cents anyways.
Thank you. Talia's asked a couple of questions. So I'm trying to pick which one to answer, but let's go with this one because we kind of touched on it before. What do you think is the most important part about social media presence and how you market yourself as a creator? Do you have any icks in the way that others present themselves in a way you disagree with? You're not allowed to use me as an example for this one. You're not allowed to say I don't like Charlie pretending she signs under bonnets of cars, which was my most best performing reel, which is the weirdest thing. A fan asked me to sign their engine bay, and I signed right next to like Garth Tander. So I shouldn't be doing this. I feel like no relevance here. But Jules, I know you touched on using your best content for your social media feed. Is there anything else you would recommend, as a photographer, you should be doing?
Well, I still think it's about being authentic as well, because what I think is icky, you might think is really cool. So I think, that there's, especially with social media and the internet, there is so much work available because everybody wants content, and there's plenty of work for everybody. But it's about being authentic in what you want to do. So my style is my style, and so when I am presenting myself on my social media platforms, that's I present myself how I am, and that's what you're going to get if you hire me. But then I'm like my content, say, compared to Tenayah's like young, she's completely different. We're going to have totally different content, but that doesn't make either one good or bad, and it doesn't make either right or wrong. You just have to make sure that whatever you do, you're authentic, and also be very mindful, obviously, like it's social media 101. Whatever you're posting, everybody can see it. So, just be mindful about what you post, but just always think about, particularly I think Instagram is the most important one because it is on a grid. Like, just have a look at what you're doing and make sure that visually it all works and it's your best work. Like, always put your best work forward. Less is more, and make sure that it's what represents you and your style, because everybody's style is different, and as someone employing you to do the job, they might not want my style, but so I don't want to represent myself as something I'm not. So I think you just need to be authentic and mindful about what you're putting out there, because everybody sees it and it doesn't go away.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So we're into the last kind of 5 minutes here. So I just want to make sure that I cover off everything that I can. An interesting one that I think Tenayah would be perfect for social media, on Instagram. Perfect 4K content is expected for large accounts. What are your views on this? Can teams utilize more affordable equipment? And what would be your recommendations? We touched on this a little bit earlier in terms of what you need to get yourself started. But yeah, what do you think?
No phone is a 4K screen. So the only reason I shoot 4K is the ability to then crop in. But all my timelines and all my videos I export, unless it's like a massive after movie and it's going to go on YouTube, because people can watch YouTube on their TV, which is then 4K representation. So just think about where it's going. I use GoPros for things, and GoPros are not the greatest looking camera, but they serve their purpose of being so versatile. And I put a GoPro today on the outside of the cab of the Trophy Tour truck that was coming from Orange to Bathurst. I suction cupped it to I don't know if it's turned up, I assume it's still somewhere, but I suction cupped it to the cab and time warped the drive from Orange into Bathurst over the mountain and things, and coming into that. And like a GoPro, I couldn't do that with my Canon camera. So while it doesn't look great, it serves the purpose of what I needed it to do. So everything I do is a 1080, 1920, 1080 timeline. So I don't need to shoot 4K. I just shoot 4K because I can then crop in. But you don't need to be doing anything in 4K unless it's going to YouTube. It's probably the only sphere really high end stuff that you'd need 4K for. But 1080. Everything shoots 1080 today. A lot of things. Like my phone takes every video I take in 4K, and it kind of annoys me a little bit because it fills up my storage so quickly. Like, I'd rather it just be a 1080 like a HD camera, but it's not. So I just end up with 150, 200 gigabytes of videos of drivers putting helmets on and getting into race cars that I never use again. So 1080 is more than fine for social media. there was a phase where I was doing things in 640 just because apparently it looked better. I don't know if it did, but made the file slightly shorter. But yeah, 1080 is more than fun, especially for social media.
Yeah.
The life
Awesome.
of it is so short. Like, it's there for 24 hours, and unless you hit on a trending reel, no one's really looking at it any beyond there, unless they're going purposely to look at you. It's not going to be in their feed, so don't stress too much. Don't overthink it.
Oh, good advice. Do not overthink it. Jules, there's a couple of technical ones for you. Would you say a Nikon D3400, which I'm going to probably say that wrong, is an okay camera for photography? How do you say that? D3400?
Do you know what? I don't know anything about Nikon cameras. I'm a Canon user, and I've always used Canon. So I'm really, really sorry. I'd say no, buy a Canon, but no, I think
So
it's like Tenayah said.
Canon.
It's like Tenayah said, though. There's in the cameras, there's Olympus, Sony, Canon, Nikon, and I think you're splitting hairs when you talk about which is better. It's all personal preference. If you want to ask me anything about Canon cameras, I can answer, but I know absolutely zero about any other brand. So sorry about that.
Do you know what, Jules? Jules, the best camera you got is the one you've got.
Yeah, well, exactly. But mine,
the start making
let's
stuff.
Be honest. Canon are the best camera, though. So.
Canon are the best cameras,
but what you can... to you by Canon.
You just happen to have two Canon people on here.
But I do love
but a good thing,
advice.
An answer to that question is jump on to there's a website called Comparison. It's like a B&H or something like that. But jump on and go, Canon R7 or something, but that's a new camera, so keep in mind that's a new camera, and go comparison Nikon 340, whatever it is, and then you'll be able to get like a specs list, and it will tell you what it will do and what it won't do versus a new camera, and you'll be able to say, okay, this only takes a 12 megapixel photo, this takes a 50 megapixel photo, cool, I'm going to get a 12 megapixel photo from this, or this is my alternative, but then there's a price tag on the alternative. So
actually, that would be my advice with that. Look at, frames per second probably is not one of my higher priorities. One of my higher priorities would be megapixels, and just look at things like that on the cameras. I would go mirrorless, especially if you're purchasing a new camera, because that is where all the technology is headed. So even though you can pick up a DSLR quite cheaply, I'd invest in the mirrorless because that's where everything's going. But yeah, it's a very personal decision because, you could argue all day long which is better, and,
I do argue
you
with
just want to look
creators.
at the specs. I
have lots of arguments of Sony people, and I'm just stand my ground with my Canon because, in the industry, Sony... No, I'm giving an example. Sony is the leading videography camera. So if you're coming in, go buy Sony, and a lot of people do.
Canon are putting a lot of focus into their videography. That's like their number one focus at the moment is their video cameras as opposed to still photography. But it's like having the argument which is better, Ford or Holden. Like, you're never going to win. So it's a personal preference. And unfortunately I don't know the specs on Nikon, so sorry about that.
No, but yeah, thank you for being so honest. And I think, like you said before, both of you, like, whatever you can afford to start off is the best camera. So just don't overthink it, like you say, and just get started and do what you can do, because that's better than not starting because you don't have what you think you should have. I think that's probably the best way to go.
And there are photographers taking really good photos on not the latest and most expensive camera, and there's people with the most expensive camera that, in my personal opinion, their photos are rubbish. So
all the gear,
the camera definitely makes a difference. 100%. The better your camera, there are differences, but you still have to be a good photographer. So start with what best you can afford.
Thank you. All right, so I know we've gone 2 minutes over. I really want to smash through a couple of questions that I can just see here.
Let's go over. Let's send it.
Let's just smash through
go.
some.
No one's got anywhere to be. It's fine.
Nudge, Priyanka into part 3. Okay. All right. So, what would you say is the best learned editing? So I'm saying that I think that means the best way to learn editing, advice, tips you would give personally, because I'm rubbish at it. Just make sure you can master Premiere. If as long as you can work in Premiere, you've got a pretty good basis, and then you can learn other programs as you go. Premiere, and honestly, if you don't have that capacity for that, just learn how to edit on your phone using like GarageBand. Like as
CapCut.
long as
No, get
CapCut.
CapCut. Free
Perfect.
iPhone app that I use more often than I
I'm gonna
should.
write that down.
Yeah.
Great
Actually, I
app,
downloaded
great
that a
app.
couple of weeks ago. Yeah, really good.
It's very good. It's very good. Does everything my Premiere does, just way more difficult because I'm on a phone screen, obviously, and I'm not
Yeah.
computering thing. But yeah, the
Nails on a screen. Yeah.
industry leading editing software is Premiere Pro, and then industry leading photography software is Lightroom, and it's all a part of the Adobe
And
Creative
Photoshop.
Cloud. So
Yeah.
Photoshop, yeah.
And
So
in
you know, I think
fairness,
if you're a student, sorry, you go.
yeah, I'd probably study that over. Like editing is really hard. Like Lightroom's pretty basic and that's pretty easy to use. Photoshop is, to me, it's not very user friendly. Like it took me a long time to get my head around Photoshop. But yeah, same thing again. If you're not going to study it in an actual course, what you want to do is like know what you're trying to achieve. Like you can do basic tutorials online and then you target specific things. So, you know, I want to change the color of this blue car to red, and you Google it and you'll get whole tutorials on it. So that it's the same sort of thing as trial and error. But yeah, I probably would invest in a little bit of, I don't know about you, Tenayah, but I find editing, yeah, that can be quite tricky. So probably investing in some sort of online course probably wouldn't be the worst idea, or asking someone lots
Editing
of
will
questions.
make or break. It'll make or break your content because you can shoot everything you want, but if you can't put it into a succinct little fancy, you know, something that looks good. So your footage can be great, but if it's just out of a camera, you could have just shot on your phone, you know. So yeah, I self-taught myself before I went to uni, so I knew how to already do it, and that was just from YouTube. It's because I learnt cutting Grey's Anatomy fan videos. That's how I taught myself how to make videos. So I don't know if I out myself there, but
Brilliant.
yeah, I'm a bit of a weirdo, but that's how I taught myself. And I used to make like Facebook cover photos for like pages and things on Photoshop and learnt, and like I was just so drawn to it that it was so easy for me to spend 3-4 hours on YouTube at a time learning how to do these things. So there are that many, you know, hour-long courses that will teach you probably more than I know on Premiere and Lightroom. And, you know, in my toolbar on my laptop here, I've got Premiere, Lightroom, InDesign, and Illustrator and Photoshop that are opened daily. So you need to be able to master them, and they take a lot. So but you can't be in this industry without knowing how to use them. So you may as well start now, even if you're not working in the sport yet. Start now and learn the tools. If you want some practice footage to practice editing on, like let me know. Like send me an email and I'll send you a link to a compile of footage that you can play around with and practice editing on. Like even if you don't have your own content, just start practicing. It'll take a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Jules, what size lens would you recommend for the work that you do?
If you're gonna buy one lens, like I have, I don't know, I think 9, ranging from like an 8mm wide angle right up to 500mm. I've got extenders, I've got everything. And I normally would run 2 bodies. So I have a zoom lens on one and then a short lens on another, so I can just flick between. But if you're just buying one lens to start with, I would say, I mean, personally, my favorite lens is probably the 70 to 200, but the 70 is probably, I don't know. There's a 24 to 105, which would probably be a good, if you can only afford one lens, that would probably be a good way to start, because in the pit area or that sort of thing, you can get nice wide shots. 105's not too bad. You can get shots on track. But really, realistically, down the track, you need a good range because you need good zoom lenses for on track. You know, even in pit area, you know, you can get great shots with a zoom, but you then need some wide. So, yeah. But if you were just going to get one, I'd probably say the 24 to 105.
There's another great Canon lens. I know you love my Canon call outs, Charlie. There's a cool Canon lens that sits as part of the STM range, which is like their prosumer. So you have the L series, which is the fancy, great, expensive, best glass you can get lens. And there's a lens that we have part of our kit that is a part of the prosumer range, and it's 24 to 240. So great starter lens. It's got an unfixed aperture, so you've got to be able to compensate in that. But yeah, one of our guys in our crew uses it purely because he can go from, you know, go out on a photography adventure at a racetrack and shoot 240 mil at one end, but then also come into the pits and shoot 24 mil at the same time. So yeah.
You reckon you still get decent quality with a lens like that? See, I wouldn't shoot anything other than an L series. For socials.
For socials, yeah. It's completely fine, and 90% of our stuff that we do is social stuff. But then we still have the whole L suite as well. Like my three lenses that I travel to every event is a 24 to 70 2.8, 70 to 200 2.8, and a 50 mil 1.2. They're my.
Oh, here we go.
There's a whole
that's a 28 to 70. Yeah, I'll give you
20. I picked that 28 to 70 up in the Canon store the other day, and it is a honker of a lens. Holy moly! It's so heavy. It's a honker.
Yeah. And then
heavy.
It's a workout.
I was like, it's going to hurt my arms.
I think this one, the 70 to 200 is probably one of my most favourite. I use that for portrait shooting. I use that for everything. But yeah, I think the 70 is probably a little bit. Oh, there you go. The 70 is probably. But then saying that, this is such a hard question because you could then just get the prime 50 mil, which is only like $300. It's. Yeah, I don't know.
My prime 50 mil cost me like $3,000, but it's the best thing I've ever bought in my life.
Yeah.
Someone needs to ask us another question. Otherwise, Jules and I are just going
that's a hard one.
You guys getting your nerd on over your lenses. I'm quite enjoying this.
That'll be webinar number 3. Jules versus
Tenayah. 3 would be me and Jules.
Yeah.
Just me and Jules just talking about. And this one's got stabilization and then autofocus and manual.
Oh, but I think we need to point out the level. No, we need to point out the level of passion that you need to be like in not only in this sport, but be doing it for as long as these incredible women have been doing it, and the fact that you still get excited about talking about not only your equipment but talking about the places that you go, the things that you do, the moments that you're a part of. I think that's the most important thing that we could probably get across to everyone, is that this is what it takes, because this is not a 9-to-5 job. We say this every single time. There's also very limited opportunity for motorsport in this country, and to be at the level that everyone, I guess, here is, and to be there, to get there, to push yourself towards that, you need grit, you need determination, and you need to show that you can absolutely do the job. So these two women are prime examples of that in both their fields. And I think, we need to thank them very, very much for their time, their expertise, and for making lenses sexy. So just everyone.
There's a few more there. There's a few in the background. Bit of product placement.
I was looking at the helmets as well. Like, it's so good. That's an amazing office.
Yeah, they're not mine. They're obviously not mine.
Cool. It's so cool.
Yeah.
All right.
The office got built around fitting those helmets up there.
As it should be. Okay, so that we have got a little bit over time. Thank you all so much for your incredible questions and for joining us tonight. I know we didn't get to all of them because there's ones being added as we go. Oh, people laughing at my jokes. Thank you, Tara. Thank you very much. I always love it when people laugh at my jokes. Okay, so if there is wanting to join us, that meeting us in person is probably the most important thing I can say next. For those of you that might be interested, both what have we got next? Let me say. They're both attending the Girls on Track Pathways event at Premier Racing on the Gold Coast on the 24th of October, which is Gold Coast 500 week. So I'll be just in pure panic mode for 7 days. In addition to them being available, there's also a number of other professionals from very different areas of the sport joining them at the event. So there is something for everyone. So if you're interested in attending, please visit motorsport.org.au/girlsontrack for more information. Those also attending the event will be provided with the opportunity to visit the Premier Racing Garage. That is Tim Slade and Jimmy Golding, run by Pete Zibris, who also does drag racing. So very interesting place to go. They've got so many different things going on at that workshop. And you also will go into their garage as well at the Gold Coast 500 on Friday, the 27th of October. So it's a great way to see the inner workings of a race team at in their workshop, in their garage, at a live race meeting as well. So these events are free to attend, but they come on a first come, first serve basis. So please hop on motorsport.org.au/girlsontrack if you want to get involved. Also, if you have any questions, please email Priyanka, the wonderful Priyanka, wave Priyanka, in case anyone doesn't know who you are. There we go. And you can reach her at girlsontrack@motorsport.org.au. So any questions at all about Girls on Track, about connecting with any of the ambassadors and champions, connecting with any of us across the events, mentorship, what's happening next year, everything. Priyanka is the program facilitator and does an incredible job at delivering it across Australia. So thank you, Priyanka. Of course, as well as we mentioned earlier, please join us on the Facebook group as well. Search FIA Girls on Track Australia. You will find us, and everyone is so active in there. We're your biggest heroes and cheerleaders for everything that you're doing. And if you need any advice on the spot as well, please feel free to join us in there and connect with us all there too. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Sorry, before we one sec. Yeah, sorry, before we log off, there's one question that we didn't get to answer last time and we haven't got it this time. Tanayah looks a bit worried. Don't worry, Tanayah, it's not bad.
No, I'm in the Q&A replying to questions that we didn't answer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so this one's for
Where's
both
that?
of you.
I don't even know how to do.
This one's for both of you. What advice do you have for those listening who might want to follow in your footsteps? Jules, do you want to go first?
Yes, I think it's kind of, well, I think the Girls on Track thing is the best way to start. There was nothing like that around previously, and yeah, I think that would, to me, that would be the first place you'd start, because then you have all the resources open to you and you have all the contacts open to you, because one of the biggest things in getting into the sport and, you know, getting where everything is contacts and knowing the right people, and a lot of jobs and a lot of things come about by just knowing the right people. Someone knows someone, and so I think that would be my advice. Get onto the Girls on Track, like register for that, go to some events, and then, you know, whatever field you want to be in, there's access to all those sort of people through the Girls on Track. So, I mean, to me, I'd start there, and then you can hone in and be like, right, I want to be a photographer. Who do I need to speak to? Speak to the right people, get some, you know, more targeted advice. So I think that's such a no-brainer these days, that you know that you want to work in motorsport. There's billions of different roles, and the Girls on Track can guide you, in whatever you want to do.
Yeah, perfect. What about you, Tanayah?
Firstly, know what you want to do, or work out a way to work it out. And to do that is to, you know, try a lot of different things. Like you, bring it back to Amy, who I'm mentoring. I'm like, hey, I need a photographer and videographer. If you want to be that, that would be great. And then she's kind of like, I'm not quite sure if I want to do video. And I'm like, that's cool. Just work it out and let me know. I'm not going to force you to do something you don't want to do, but I do need to find someone that can do that. So if it's not for you, that's fine, but give it a go first and find out. There was a question in there saying, how do I work out being a PR manager or a content creator and journalist and things like that? probably a big thing that a lot of people don't realize is they all work together. We all are working for the one goal, which is coverage of the sport. So, you know, I work with journalists who write the words for my media releases. I then, you know, work with a photographer who takes the photos for my media releases. I make the videos, and then I have to send that to someone to send the PR out. You know, PR people are very, very well connected and you know, have their mailing lists and always know, like, always on top of things like that. But then journalists, you know, they just write words. They're very, very good at, whilst a photographer can tell a story in a single photo, or I tell a story in a 60-second video, a journalist can tell the same story with words. And I'm not very good at that. I can barely string 2 words together typing. But yeah, I don't do that. So it's fine. But just try a lot of different things, work out, come to Girls on Track events and talk to people working in the industry, because if you ask me a real question, I'll give you a real answer about the reality of doing this for a job. Like, it is not all sunshine and rainbows, but I don't think any industry is. And I'll be honest about it. Like, when I went to the Sandown one, I popped in for like 20 minutes, hadn't eaten all day, and everyone's looking at me because I'm just at the buffet table, like smashing party pies. I'm like, I'm hungry. And then there was like this Leamington red velvet cake, and it was delightful. Good food at Girls on Track events. But like, I hadn't had a chance to eat all day. My day was just, you know, it started at 6 a.m. and by 2 o'clock, I'm like, cool, I actually want to eat something now. So if you ask me a question, I'm not gonna tell you the pretty, you know, photoshopped answer that you want, that it's great and it's not hard and that, yeah, every day is easy. I'm definitely not going to tell you that. So I'm going to tell you, like, yeah, like this Bathurst week, my week for Bathurst started on the Sunday 2 weeks before the event. And every day we're creating content. So yeah, it's 14 days of work straight. If you're after a 5-day-a-week job that, you know, you go to a job for, you know, 8 hours and one of those hours is your lunch break, this is really not for you. And the sooner you work that out, honestly, the better for all of us, if you don't want to do it, because I don't want to help people who aren't like in and who aren't like, this is what I want. And honestly, if you come to an event and realize it's not for you, awesome. You know, like, the event has served its purpose. You haven't gone and got a university degree in something that you might not want to do. So I think, yeah, everything we're doing here is so valuable for the sport and so awesome. So come and chat to us at events and DM me if you want. I like talking to everyone. I don't have a lot of friends, so when people DM me on Instagram, it's a lot of fun. And I don't have a lot of friends because I spend every waking minute taking photos of race cars, and they don't DM you on Instagram. So
All right.
I'm
So
such a
there we have
nerd.
it.
You guys make me seem so weird.
I'm still thinking about the Grey's Anatomy. That's how you learn to edit. But anyway, I'll just blaze over that.
Don't go and find my YouTube channel that still exists.
Yeah, I will. Okay. Sorry, everyone, that we went over, but we can all agree it was completely worth it. Thank you, Priyanka, for bringing up that question and make sure we answer it. Yeah, like we said before, if you want to come along to the Premier Racing event on the 24th of October and then also come along on Friday the 27th, please head to motorsport.org.au/girlsontrack and make sure you register and you can get involved. Likewise, reach out to Priyanka if you have any more questions or you want to see part 3 of this amazing trio. Then, you know, email Priyanka and say, we want number 3. We want number 3.
Sponsored by Canon.
Yes, let's do it. I've got to. We've got contacts. We can make that happen. Canon will do something. I'm sure.
Gosh,
Canon love
okay.
us.
Number 3 is absolutely happening. So thank you all so much for being here. Jules, thank you so much. And please get some sleep because you must be jet lagged. Tenayah, I hope you rest up on the mountain and I will see you Tuesday. And yeah, Priyanka, thank you again so much for facilitating and making this happen for us.
Thank you, ladies. Thanks, everyone, for joining, and see you all
Thanks,
soon.
everyone.